Hello. Oh, that's live. Welcome, everyone, to this panel discussion about IoT sourcing, brought to you by the IoT M2M Council. My name is Keith Kreischer. I'm the Executive Director of the IMC. And, for those of you who don't know us, the IMC is the largest trade association serving the global IoT sector with 25,000 enterprise users, product makers, OEMs, and apps developers as our rank and file adopter membership. And we're also served by 35 of the most influential IoT solutions providers. Our mission is to accelerate the adoption of IoT technology for the public good. And we look at this session on IoT sourcing as exactly in keeping with that mission. We've got refreshments at the back if anyone would like. We've got food as well as some beer and wine and waters. So please help yourself. Relax. We're going to be here for the next hour and a half. And with that, I will introduce my good friend and colleague, Fred Yentz from IoT Launch. Fred, take us away.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everybody. How are you? So welcome to the conclusion of day 2 of Embedded World. So, like I said, my name is Fred Yentz. I am the CEO and founder of a company called IoT Launch. We focus on the IoT ecosystem. We think about knowledge, relationships, ecosystem, and performance. So it's a pleasure to have this session with you today. And it's great to be joined by 2 other industry experts. This is a logical extension of last year's presentation. And let me get into this for a minute. When we say holistic IoT sourcing, last year we did it was 6 months ago because Embedded World was earlier in the year, or later in the year. So last year we did a survey and we polled embedded users and embedded developers. And we asked them, 1, is IoT important to you? And it seems like a silly question because almost everything we buy today is connected. So is IoT important? Yes. Most people, 70%, basically said, yes, IoT is important. Now, that's interesting, but the next question was more interesting in terms of the answers. We asked them, as you're starting your journey designing product, embedded product that you're going to sell to product makers or service providers, what are you thinking about in terms of what you buy now? At the design phase, are you only buying hardware? Are you considering buying and designing in connectivity? And are you potentially considering and buying cloud services? Right. What exactly are you doing at the design phase? Because embedded used to be just hardware. And now embedded is really expanding to other elements of embedded. So last year, we had we had 3 panelists last year. We had a microcontroller company, we had a radio company, and we had a cloud company, a little company called Microsoft. And we had a really good discussion with the audience, and we expect to have another one. Now, this year, I'm going to go back to this. We're really excited to have 2 other critical suppliers in the ecosystem. One is security. Everybody's talking about security and how do we embed security and where do we use security. So when we talk about purchasing and designing early, where does security fit? And the second area is we're really going to get down to when does connectivity come into play in your purchasing cycle time. So with that, I want to introduce Nils Gerhardt. He's the CTO of Utimaco, and he's going to take you through a little bit about his company, and following Jörg will be Jörg. So come on in, Nils.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today, and I hope for all your questions later. But to set the frame, I want to introduce Utimaco, what we're doing very briefly, so that you know from what perspective I'm talking. Fred was already saying that we focus on security, and this is actually the picture that we normally use to explain in simple terms of what we do. All these cases you see here in a smart city, where you digitalize the city and where IoT is required, there's also the root of trust needed. Something that you can trust with your keys, something that is actually used to secure this whole use case. For instance, if you think you want to connect your emergency vehicles, then of course you want to make sure that this is happening in an authenticated way. And basically, Utimaco is providing this root of trust for the ecosystem, for all these use cases that you see here. The company actually is a medium-sized company. We are a little bit more than 500 employees, about 100 million plus turnover. But we have been around for now our 40th year in cybersecurity. So we're already around a little bit longer than that, but 40 years in security, basically present around the world. Now, linking this whole thing to IoT, to give you a little bit of a perspective what we do and how we serve our customers to secure the IoT ecosystem, I've selected 4 use cases here. Of course, there are more than that, but it's just a little bit of an overview on where we play. One thing, and you saw this before, is supply chain security. So how can I actually give a device an identity, and how can I manage that over the life cycle of that device? That's the first thing. Secondly, there's a lot of things that talk to infrastructure. Look at cars, for instance. When they talk to infrastructure or to other vehicles, you need PKI technology. You need, again, some sort of secure root of trust to make sure this is facilitated in a secure way. Another aspect is when you have devices like medical devices, but also in a manufacturing environment, machines that talk to a gateway, that talk to the cloud, that store data in the cloud. This needs to be somehow bundled and channeled and encrypted. And that's another use case in the IoT world that we protect and support today. And the last one, of course, is all about data. You're collecting a lot of data. You want to do your analytics on the data itself. But of course, that database needs to be secure. And on top of these use cases, as a quick example, I wanted to highlight one thing that I believe will be more and more important when we talk about data, IoT devices, connected devices, and also identities. And that's the discussion on how actually we create the difference between data transparency, how do we protect the data, and then also what does data ownership play as a role. And when I'm talking about that, for instance, you might have heard about the EU Data Act that will actually redefine that and allow you to extract certain data that belongs to you and decide what is happening to this data. And these are the areas that I believe will be the prime areas we will look at in securing it in the future. So this is just something I will go very quickly over. So you might have heard some of these terms, PKI, hardware security modules, time stamping, which may play a role for you. These are all components that help us to provide these security services and the root of trust for our customers. This is all from my side. I just wanted to give you a brief overview. This is all about the discussion later and your questions. But I wanted to give you a bit of a perspective where we play as Utimaco and how we help our customers securing the IoT ecosystem. Thank you. Back to you, Fred.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you, Nils. So next, I would like to introduce Jörg Wolf, and he's going to take you through a little bit introduction on A1 Digital, and then we'll have our panel discussion. So get your questions ready.
So, thank you, Fred. Good evening, everybody. So I'm happy to be here, together with my colleagues Helen, Sel, and Philip. So we are in the back there. We have some chocolate for you. Just after the discussion, please pass by, talk to us, put us the questions. Okay, so A1 Digital, who we are founded in 2017. In our portfolio, it's IoT, advanced analytics. We have a cloud called Exascale, completely GDPR compliant, network services, cybersecurity. We have more than 1,500 customers, around 200 employees, a bit more at the moment. We have offices in Munich, Vienna, and Lausanne, completely Europe-based. And we have 6 data centers in 4 European countries, which is very important for us. What is our value chain? What are we doing? So on the left side, it's the hardware. That's your hardware, your sensors, your machines, your whatever. And we come in the middle part with the connectivity, so you can purchase SIM cards, data plans from us. And then we have digital IoT platforms. So we have different platforms, maybe for asset tracking, for energy, for industrial solutions, rail, whatever. It's all hosted in our own cloud. The cloud is called Exascale. As I mentioned, it's completely GDPR compliant, as all our data centers are located in Europe, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, and Romania. And from there, we have the possibilities to do more things. We can transfer the data into your system, your ERP systems, whatever you would like. You can host your solutions in our Exascale platform too. It's completely Kubernetes-based, so put your Dockerized solutions in there and it will run. Or you can use our services as machine learning, streaming analytics, and so on. So that's the value chain, that's the field in which A1 is digital as plain. And yes, let's go on for the discussion. And if you want to meet, we are in the back. Contact us. Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Grab a seat.
Magst du nicht mit?
Kannst dich gerne die Bitte setzen.
So thank you for the brief introductions of your company. I want to open up the discussion with, when in the value chain are you currently contacted by customers, and when do you think that time is going to move up or back in the value chain when decisions are made and designs are first created? And we'll start with you, Nils.
Sure. Actually, we see customers that start as early as with the silicon, because the silicon is already a component that needs protection, and it continues, of course, with OEMs. If you build an ECU for a car, then that is something that you need to secure. And those are the customers that contact us today. And that, of course, goes then up to the cloud service providers that use the hardware security modules to protect the data in the cloud. So it can really range from the very beginning, small components, to the biggest systems.
Okay, very good. And then, so from your point of view, Jörg, when do customers contact you about the A1 services?
Normally when their product is already finished, they have done all the development, the sourcing, production is running on, and then somebody cares about the data plans. And that's where we come into play with the data plans, and maybe for the IoT platform too, and they want to have their data displayed, dashboards, do machine learning on that. That's when they come to us. Most of them have completely developed solutions that need connectivity, IoT platform, and so on. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Well, so from your point of view, Nils, you're spot on with the survey results. Sooner the better in getting you engaged. So from your point of view, Jörg, you're getting contacted later in the game than you would like to.
Yes.
What kind of advantages would an embedded designer get if they came to you earlier?
Yeah, in the past we had, as I told you, 2G networks. So the whole world was very easy. We had 900 megahertz networks. We had 1,800 megahertz networks. One chip, one world. It could run everywhere. But now the world is getting more and more complex. So new technologies are coming up. New rate plans are coming up. New fees are coming up. And that's nothing the engineer normally has on hand. He's thinking about technology, so he says NB-IoT is perfect in the absolute basement, but there are some limitations maybe he doesn't know about. So it's the earlier the better, because we can do the consulting. We know all about the things upcoming. There are new fees, new technologies, whatever, so we can help earlier to make the perfect product to fit into the solution.
Okay. So from that point of view, I think maybe there's a legacy point of view about the simplicity of a data plan. Back in the good old days of 2G, as you said, data plan was a data plan,
Yes.
and now there's a lot more choices. You've got integrated SIMs, eSIMs. There's all kinds of technologies.
So many possibilities, and you have to think long term and what's coming up and what technologies are on a sunset phase and so on. What's changing in the world? And from engineers, you go to the supplier of the modules of the modems, and it's all easy. It's data sheets, and it all has advantages, but it's only one side, and the other side is the network you connect to, and that has a lot in. So you need a lot of information from that.
Okay. So Nils, from your point of view, I look at security as, and this is going to sound naive, and it's not. I trust security is kind of a new problem for a lot of the embedded designers. Is because it's a new problem that they're facing, and it's maybe more complex or nebulous. Do you think that's why they're reaching out to you earlier in the design cycle?
Actually, it depends a little bit on the industry whether they reach out early or not. So, some of the chip manufacturers do reach out because they are pressured by their customers. But I would say we have a similar challenge that you have on the connectivity side, that there could be more companies reaching out early because, the more you integrate security into your product at the very beginning, the less challenges you have afterwards. Retrofitting is very difficult once you have that device out. And understand that you have different life cycles with IoT devices, so it's all about the features. You need to bring out the devices in a fast fashion, and security may not be the first thing in your mind, but that's something that may be a little bit short-sighted with the attacks we see on supply chains, on certain hardware components, and the impact that you might have later.
So when we think about the other participants in the supply chain, right? And last year I mentioned we had a cloud company, a hyperscaler, we had a radio module company, and we had a microcontroller company. Who would both of you reach out to in the ecosystem to try to leverage including you earlier? And they're traveling in groups. We know the module company and the microcontroller companies are getting contacted very early in the design cycle. Are they companies you work with?
We try to work closer with them and to get in partnerships to get the awareness to the clients. Okay, data plans are something important. Managed connectivity is different to what all the contracts we have on our cell phones. So in Germany, a lot of times it's like the way you have the product, and then they say, okay, the data plane comes from the purchasing, and the purchasing says, we have a contract with Deutsche Telekom, and Deutsche Telekom will provide the data plane. But the data plane in managed in machine-to-machine connectivity is something completely different to the data planes we have on our smartphones, and there's no awareness of there's a lack of awareness in the field. And the other, so we try to get closer to them to get an awareness on that.
Okay. Nils, thoughts?
No, these companies are all companies we work with. You need the security in the cloud. You may be aware that the cloud providers provide hardware security modules and key management, of course. And that's something they provide from their own cloud. And then there are providers like us that provide this also as a trust as a service. So you could be staying agnostic to the different clouds that are out there to collect your data. And of course, with the module manufacturers and with others, we work as well from the beginning. I think it's more like on some of the other more consumer-oriented devices where the security aspects will play a bigger role, and where I think earlier contacts would actually help to build the right level of security into the product. Today you have to look at how many updates you're making to a product over the lifetime. And every single update needs to be protected. You see that on your iPhone, or you see this on your Android device. And this has to be fundamentally built and designed into the system. This is only becoming more difficult. This is not becoming easier with potential quantum computers being able in the future to break certain cryptographic algorithms we are using today. The next step would be to actually secure your device against these sort of attacks forward thinking in terms of adding to the security level. And I think this is something that warrants an early discussion. And the early discussion will benefit you as a manufacturer that you have everything built in, because it's not so difficult anymore to define this kind of root of trust for your device.
So if I'm a designer, what type of competitive advantages will I receive if I think about security early compared to another designer? You know, there's a lot of guys out here on the floor that are designing widgets and gadgets and cool things. How can I differentiate if I talk to you both early? Right? I mean, that's kind of the game. You're selling to this market today, at least here at Embedded World. What's the message to them? Because some of them might be in the audience, and if we talk loud enough, some of them can hear us on the floor. So,
I mean, the simple thing is to start with the automotive industry. Security is just required. So if you want to sell into that industry, it's a must that you think about the security. And it's normally also long-term security that you have to look at. So that's one example. In the mobile space, it's similar. I mean, the 5G networks that are built out is something that is also controlled by the national security agencies that actually set certain rules, certain standards on how you can connect. A SIM card and eSIM is supposed to be a certified element in the future. And this sort of security needs to be integrated, but it depends a little bit in which field you want to play. And then, of course, you can also argue that there's a lot of companies that are working in an air-gapped manufacturing environment today. And if you want to win them over and show them that actually the cloud brings so many benefits that opening up is the right thing to do, there you actually can also prove very well that you have invested early on in security and making sure that you have the right protocols, the right cryptography in place to secure the data flow. They have air-gapped today and they open up tomorrow.
right.
And from our case, you can save a lot of money because you choose the right module, you choose the right data plane, the right technology. So it's more from a long-term perspective. You save developing loops maybe, and you make a better product, and you save cost on the data plan.
So I've got a trick question for you, my friend. So as many of the hardware companies, to go unnamed in this conversation, the module companies, they're trying to go up stack. They're trying to potentially provide data plans. They're trying to potentially provide cloud services. Yep. There's an idea that bundling is good because maybe they saw this survey too. Talk to me about the advantages of being really good and best in class in the space you serve, and is that up stack migration causing you challenges?
Maybe, but yeah, we see that modules are coming up that have integrated eSIMs, EUICCs, and but I think we are more specialized. We have the better overview, and it's consulting.
Okay.
It depends on every project that is done. What's your need? Where do you want to go? How many data do you want to transfer? And that's what we can do. And it's just a standard data plan. Pay $10 for 10 years. Okay, may work, but for the more specialized projects, consulting is key.
All right, so I want to turn it to the audience and see if there's any questions, but kind of the takeaway summary here is the embedded space isn't necessarily a bunch of IoT experts. They're entering into this, and it's important. So consultancy, advice, security is a differentiator. Who in the audience has any questions for the two panelists?
And please use the microphone in the middle.
Yeah, there's a microphone that we can hand to you if you got a question.
Testing. There's a microphone right here.
No question, just testing. Okay.
I've got a question, and that is, we're talking a lot about hyperscalers over the last couple of years. It seems like some of them are drawing back. We've got connectivity and security here. What do you guys think about that? First of all, is it true, and what do you think about that?
It is true. We saw last year that Google stopped their IoT system by mid of this year. They will be no longer available. And yeah, we see just because it's coming from a big hyperscaler and it's there, it doesn't mean it's always there. So yeah, we were talking earlier about that. It's just about some small cents up and down what destroys their business models, and they stop it. Yeah, so we see upcoming demand on our cloud solution, because we're doing a lot of projects in the energy business, so GDPR compliance is very important. So yeah, that's often in the field. Yeah.
Okay. John?
Question for you, Nils. So when you look at greenfield, going out there, solutions, when you're doing this is early on, but you have people coming to you in the brownfield. System's already out, and now they're thinking about security.
Absolutely, they start looking into the next generation mostly. I mean, sometimes of course you have a discussion whether you can retrofit it and you can actually help them securing what's already out there, specifically in terms of software updates. But they also then realize once they have the first generation out that the second generation might actually get security from the scratch, and that's some discussions we have. Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So, great question, because sometimes people don't think about security until it's too late. And then it becomes really important, right? I would assume some of your customers come to you a little bit stung. So, good question.
It depends. I mean, we have a lot of customers from regulated industries, of course. The critical infrastructure providers, they are regulated. They know that security is their business. That's what they need to build into their products, into their services. And so they automatically come. But we have more and more customers that also in the past have not really thought about so much about security. But in the future, with all these updates coming and also the supply chain attacks that you see and what's happening, they now actually seriously considering investing and kind of trying to help, or trying to find the right vendors that help them building it in, because they may still lack some security experts. And so they also turn to us and ask us for certain integration help and so on to get kick-started from a security perspective.
So let's kind of come closer to an end here. I want to close. Everybody likes verticals. Everybody likes to talk about, a use case. And we happened to talk before the panel, and I know that you guys from an A1 Digital, you have a customer in the rail space, in the transportation space. I happen to know that the gentleman that just asked the question does a lot in rail. And I would assume that rail, as a reasonably regulated space, has some security elements as well. Is there anything you can provide in terms of an example of a use case that uses the connectivity, the security, the solutioning, and why it would have been important, or why it is important to engage with them, in this holistic manner?
I can answer. Yes, it's regulated, but by the part that we do, it's not regulated. It's mostly tracking where is the asset and how much is loaded on. So we have a project where we load on the wagon how much wood is loaded on. So they save a lot of way. They save I think 36 kilometers just going to a certified scale and going back, and they save 2 hours of time. And from security space, we use on the SIM cards we use a private APN,
okay.
And from there we have a VPN into our solution, so that path is secured as best as possible on that way here.
And that's a kind of an asset tracking type of an application. It's not a positive train control.
Honestly, you cannot control anything. It's just where is it, how much is loaded, is a container on it, temperature of the container maybe, something like that.
So that's a great example of, kind of a security's always talked about in a defense in depth model. And if you're moving lumber around or a weight scale, maybe you don't need extreme security. So a private APN is maybe what you need. You're securing the pipe.
Yeah.
Very different than maybe positive train control when we're trying to avoid a catastrophe. If there's a malicious actor in the game, and that's when probably security is more important in those types of solutions.
I mean, it just brings also up an interesting point. I mean, security doesn't have to be always encryption, authentication, everything, right? It can also be an integrity protection. That is actually something that in many cases is sufficient because some of the data may not be confidential, but you need to actually protect some of the virtualization. We talked earlier about all these virtualization that's happening in the world. Your networks get virtualized. You're in the mobile space. You have the slicing. You have certain guarantees, certain use cases you support with that. And how do you make sure that that this virtualization is actually secure? And this is something that may not actually need in all cases in confidentiality, but it needs definitely integrity, so nobody messes with that if my emergency vehicle communicate, for instance. And so this is one example. The other one is also from the mobility space. If you look at cars and ECUs, giving that an identity to actually receive in a secure way software updates, that is something that we do, for instance, to make sure this is protected over the lifetime of that car.
Very good. Well, I want to first of all thank the participants and the audience for making this a reality. I want to thank the IMC for sponsoring the event, and of course, I want to thank the team at Embedded World for providing the venue. So. Keith, do you have anything to close up on?
Just please join us for refreshments and food starting now.
Well, almost. These gentlemen are going to be in the back at two tables.
Yes.
So if you are afraid to ask a question in the audience and you've got some tough ones for them, feel free to find them as they're milling about with a glass of wine or a beer. So thank you all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Fred.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.